Welcome to Behind the Mask. I'm Dr. Bill Adams, and we have a great show for you today. Today's topic is COVID-19. Imagine that. But we're going to help you understand what your immunity is and what that means exactly. And as usually, we have our great experts here to break down this topic. So Ellery, how are you?
I'm doing wonderful. Happy to be here.
Jason, you ready to get into understanding my immunity?
I am ready, Bill Adams.
All right, well today we're going to talk about COVID-19 and understanding your immunity. With so much information out there, much of it can be misinformation. This is one place to come get real facts that you can trust in plastic surgery and beyond. And this is coming from real medical doctors and advisors and board certified plastic surgeons. So it's been 2 years now since COVID made this huge impact around the world as we all know it. The media has really flushed a lot of us with a lot of misinformation that many feel like they can no longer trust what they hear on the news, or especially when it comes to things like COVID. Today, we want to help eliminate some of the false information by educating our audience to help better protect themselves and their loved ones. A total of 212 million Americans have been fully vaccinated, which is about 64% of the country's population, according to the CDC data. But what exactly does that mean, and how does that affect a person's immunity to the virus? Now, there is a lot of information out there. As I said, people have heard of different things. They've heard if you have COVID, you never have to get a vaccine. There's a spectrum, as always. And so we're going to get into it. But I think the other part is people have been kind of led down the path that, if I'm going to go somewhere, I'm just going to get a test. But what we found is that the tests have their own limitations, and it's a point in time. And so what we want to talk about with our experts, Jason, and I want to pitch it to you, is there's many antibody tests. They were very popular, and people heard about them very early on in 2020 when COVID first became available. But we want to talk about what's called neutralizing antibodies. And neutralizing antibodies are unique because these are the antibodies that actually protect the individual from COVID. In fact, they are the thing that binds the spike protein, not allowing it to attach to the endothelial cells in the lung, causing disease and that sort of thing. So there are specific neutralizing antibody tests out there. Jason, why don't you kind of tell our audience a little bit more about that and how somebody can help to understand their protective immunity with this neutralizing antibody test?
Well, I mean, in general, when you get a vaccine, your body protects you from COVID by making antibodies, so that when the disease is reintroduced to you, you rapidly scale up and you're able to fight this off. So you can get these antibodies from either getting a vaccine or from getting COVID. If you get COVID, you then get the antibodies, and it'll prevent you from it won't prevent you from getting the same infection, but you can get a separate, different infection. So we know people who've gotten multiple COVID infections over time. But it's very hard to figure out, based upon the previous set of tests, exactly what your level of protection was. And that's where these neutralizing antibody tests came into play.
How does it work when you get your result for the neutralizing antibody test?
First of all, it's very enlightening when you get your results for the neutralizing antibody test, because I feel like in today's day and age, there's a lot of confusion. We don't feel like we have a lot of control of things or in our decisions. But when you see that tangible number, the percentage of the antibodies that you have, it brings a certain sense of peace if your antibodies are good. And then also it can trigger, action too. If your antibodies are lower, you know that you might need the vaccine or you might need to be more careful. I think that it's very advanced because your immunity towards it, back to decades, if we had this knowledge, we could have wiped out a lot of pandemics just knowing, how safe we were, herd immunity, things like that. You can actually put a number on it now. So I don't know. I think it's just like a very innovative piece of knowledge.
And just to be clear, this is a blood test, not a nasal swab test. Nasal swab test tells you whether the virus is in your body. This is a blood test to tell your body's response to a potential infection.
And just to be clear for all of our viewers, we're also talking about this is a FDA approved test. So there's a lot of things out there. So we're only going to talk about things that this actually has a FDA EUA, and that means it's been examined by the FDA. There is a percentage. This is a quantitative evaluation of your neutralizing antibodies, which is very cool because if you're above 30%, then that's been shown to have some activity, and you could be up to all the way up to 100%. But certainly if you're above 80%, that's gives you a lot of good information that whether or not you had your immunity through getting COVID or from a vaccination, that it's going to be adequate. The other cool thing that Jason and Ellery, you guys may want to comment on is that the current test, we actually are, and we'll put the link below, the test that we all have done is through a partnership of Anzu Medical and Helix Laboratories. And so it gives you a percentage against the original COVID. It gives you a percentage against the Delta variant, which has been the more virulent variant thus far historically, and probably will be the most virulent that there ever will be with this virus. But and then it also gives you what's called an N1 test, which gives you an idea whether your neutralizing antibodies came from a vaccine or from exposure to COVID. But the beauty of this is it's like we do in medicine every day. This is how we work in medicine. We don't just haphazardly tell people you need to do this or need to do this. What we do is we get some data so we can get the test, and then we say, wow, my neutralizing antibody level is low. I think I'm going to get a vaccine. Or if you had COVID and you see, wow, my neutralizing antibody is 85%, you probably don't need to get a vaccine.
We learned a lot in our office. The first 5 people who got it were me, and I have been vaccinated and boosted, and I was at 96%. My office manager, who was vaccinated, not boosted, and she came up at 60%. So we sent her to get a booster. Okay. My significant other, who had vaccinated and then got COVID, she was at 96%. One of the other girls who's been vaccinated and boosted was at 96. And the most surprising one of all was we had one staff member who had a problem with vaccines in the past, and she steadfastly refused to be vaccinated because of her almost anaphylactic response to vaccines in the past. And she came up at 96% with no recent exposure. So probably she was exposed at some time over the last couple of years with a subclinical infection and had 96% antibodies. I told her, don't worry about it. You're great now.
Well, Jason, also, let's talk a little bit about that, because everybody has that burning question. If I've had COVID, you hear, well, COVID immunity lasts forever. Or you hear, well, it doesn't only last a few months. But neither of those is true. And again, there's a spectrum. It does appear that having had COVID, that your likelihood of having longer immunity, in some people it is sustained immunity, is better than vaccination. Most vaccinations, although not all, there are people that have been vaccinated and they've maintained their immunity. So this is where this neutralizing antibody test is brilliant, because there's no black or white situation with it. You can't say, if I had COVID, I'll never need to get a vaccination. That's not true. And it's also not true that if you've had vaccination that you may not have persistent immunity. So you can test yourself with this, and then it gives you the answer.
Do you think that using the neutralizing antibody test, do you think that going off of the statistics, Dr. Pozner, with your office, with the woman in your office who is at 96%, do you think that the neutralizing antibody test can give us information on if one is better, having natural immunity or vaccinated immunity?
Yeah, sure, possibly. I mean, I think it would be interesting to look at those of us who were vaccinated 6 months down the road and get our levels versus someone who had COVID and then 6 months down the road who has not been vaccinated or not been boosted. So we'll see if their immunity is more long lasting. I don't think we can qualitatively say which is better, but maybe one is more longer lasting than the other.
One thing that the app does is it tracks it. It's good for, or the test, sorry. It has an app attached to it, actually. It's applicable for a certain amount of a time period. And so it kind of tracks the percentage that you drop. I guess, is it using data, or how does that work?
Yeah, I think the way they've extrapolated based on what's known, and essentially you would want to retest yourself at that point, just because it's just saying that over time, again, there's some people that will maintain that level of neutralizing antibody, and there's some people that will kind of drop off as time goes on. So you can retest yourself at, I think it's about 4 months that the app basically will guide you to, and then you can retest and see where you are and then make a decision based off of that. And I think the other thing that's worthwhile for us to just talk about is just, so we entitled this Understanding My Immunity. And so this is how you understand your immunity. What's been done, and I think the real world data just doesn't support it, just haphazardly testing people. If I get tested today, that doesn't mean tomorrow like everything's great. You know, who knows? Say I run into somebody, all of a sudden develop COVID because of some exposure that the test didn't pick up, or it was a false negative. It doesn't help anybody. But if I have 95% neutralizing antibody, I'm likely not going to catch COVID. And if I do, I'm going to not be very ill. And for the people that are around me, if they know they're neutralizing antibody, that's this way. You know, when people talk about the vaccine, I think has been, unfortunately, not probably as good as everybody had hoped, but it still does prevent severe disease. There's some value to it, you know, but what you want to do is see what your neutralizing antibody level is, and then you have a period of time. So it's not a point in time. It's giving you, you know, Jason, you know, you're going to be pretty good for 3 to 4 months, and then you can reconsider testing.
But, you know, imagine, you know, we're talking about using this for us healthy people. I mean, suppose people have some comorbid medical problems. They had a transplant, they have bad something or other. It could be really important to them to know their immunity level, because if they're running low, they should absolutely get boosted quickly.
All right, well, that was great stuff as usual. And if you like this episode, please press the like button below. And don't forget to subscribe to our YouTube channel for the latest on plastic surgery and more. Or you can go to our website, theplasticsurgerychannel.com. Thanks for joining us on this week Behind the Mask. For Dr. Jason Pozner and L.A. Milliger, I'm Dr. Bill Adams. Until next time.